Hi all, as you join, if you could put your name and where you're calling from or you're joining from in the chat so we can see where you are, that would be great. We'll just give another minute and then we'll get started. Hello, all. We're going to give one more minute for folks to join, and then we'll get rolling. As you join, if you can put your name and where you're joining from in the chat, that'd be great, so we know who we're talking to. Hey, Sarah, you ready to get going?
Thank you for the folks that have let us know that the chat is disabled. Obviously, we're pros at some things. Webinars are not it. So we'll work on getting the chat enabled, and then you can tell us where you're tuning in from. But I'm ready, Zoe.
Okay. I was wondering why no one was adding that. Okay, mystery solved. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the CityThread webinar on our Accelerated Mobility Playbook Technical Assistance Grant. Before we kick off with the deep content, we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Zoe Kirkus. I'm one of 3 partners at CityThread. Actually, Sarah, if you want to go on the next slide. I've worked in nonprofits for more than 20 years at the local, national, and international levels. My focus has always been on helping to create communities where residents can thrive. I've administered grant programs, largely focusing on bicycling infrastructure. I've managed programs focused on youth bicycling and engaging people of color in shared micromobility. And worked extensively with the philanthropic community as well. So I'm happy to be part of the team at CityThread to help bring the lessons that we've learned to more US cities, to create more ways for people to get around and make mobility safer, more comfortable, and easier to access for everyone. And I'll pass it over to Sarah.
Everyone, I'm Sarah Studdard, partner at CityThread. I am tuning in from Denver, Colorado. My background is in communications and community engagement with 15 years or so experience leading capacity building and storytelling initiatives that are really grounded in including residents, trusting people's feedback, and then using that to launch resident-led mobility projects, urban planning, and public space activations. And I love working at CityThread because my passion is really in supporting people's voices, and whether that's an elected official and a resident, and CityThread really allows us to do that. Tuning in, but not featured on today's webinar, is our third partner, Kyle Wagenschutz. Kyle he's our recovering bureaucrat. He was recently at People for Bikes, where he led the local innovation team. And then previous to that, worked in the city of Memphis and helped really kickstart their bike and ped implementation in Memphis. And so a little bit sort of about us, also sort of helped shape who CityThread is and what we offer. So before we get into the details on the AMP Technical Assistance Grant and the details around this exciting opportunity, I just wanted to take a few moments to share about CityThread. So Kyle, Zoe, and my experiences in public, private, and philanthropic organizations have led us to this aligned vision for the work that we want to do and that we enjoy doing in terms of partnering with folks locally. And that is really strengthening the connections in our community, whether that's people or place, and also really challenging current systems that are oppressive or are reducing mobility for people. And so City Thread uses a community-based approach to mobility programs, and that's really rooted in the development of diverse coalitions that partner with local governments to achieve shared goals and build momentum for future success. The Accelerated Mobility Playbook, or AMP, that we'll discuss today, provides a roadmap for successful project delivery, network-focused implementation plans, and authentic, intentional community engagement that really showcases what we know is existing popular and public support and enables leaders to have that information to get ahead of opposition and neutralize misinformation. While at People for Bikes, Kyle and I led a program where Austin, Denver, New Orleans, Pittsburgh, and Providence constructed 335 miles of new, safe, connected bikeways, moving those projects from projects to actual constructed infrastructure in only 24 months. Those 5 cities are now on pace to fully build out their planned networks 25 years earlier than expected. And so our playbook, AMP, really has set a precedent of success in communities of all shapes and sizes, demographics, and politics. AMP is really intended to support cities no matter their starting place. And the program is adaptable and really supports a variety of solutions that really reflect the different needs and contexts in your and everyone's community. All right, so different time zones, but y'all have probably been up for a while. It's a day, so we're going to do a little pop quiz, get the brain moving. Also, if you want to stretch, take a deep breath, stand up, whatever, feel free to use this time for yourself and to participate in the chat. So first question with our pop quiz is, how long does it take on average to build a protected bike lane? You'll have just a few seconds.
You can put your answers in the chat. We're not going to judge you, but we are interested to know how long it's taken you.
Super. Well, it's good to see some folks are above average, which is really amazing. And but really, on average, it does take a decade in most communities to build a protected bike lane or get that sidewalk connection. And to be honest, we at City Thread really believes that that is just too long, and we have some strategies on how to change that.
Okay, but first, second question on our pop quiz. Why do you think it takes so long to build bike infrastructure? Again, you can put your reasons in the chat. Sarah, if you want to go to the next slide, we have a couple options that you could select from if the immediate responses are not coming to mind, although I'm sure most of you have experience with this. So is it a money problem? Is it a staff problem? Is it a mayor problem? Is it a community problem? Like what is the barrier here? So I will give you a moment. You can select from this, or you can add your own reason in the chat if you are so moved in between stretching and popping those joints. Some people are on kind of all of the above. I hear you. Okay. Sarah, next slide. The answer is all of the above, everything. Even the people who are thinking, I don't really know why, you're correct too. All of those reasons are reasons why we don't move faster. So you're all winners. Congratulations. And we hear you and we see you and we're here to help you. Sarah,
So
over to you.
thank you, Zoe. So what is the Accelerated Mobility Playbook? Again, we're really trying to get AMP to go global. So that's what we will be referring to it going forward. No one needs another acronym, but we decided to add one to everyone's life. So AMP is really based on just some of the facts of the challenges that we all participate in, are part of, in the places that we live and work. And, we know that transportation, mobility, and access improvements do offer cost-effective solutions to the many challenges that our cities face today. But I think we can all admit that traditional methods of planning, project development, community engagement, and messaging, all that sort of came through on the most recent pop quiz question, often leave residents really searching for better answers. And that really results in projects that kind of rarely achieve what was promised, whether it was the city staff vision of a project, the elected leader, or what the resident was engaging in at a public meeting or public survey. And so AMP's goal is pretty simple. It's to help communities rapidly complete portions of their mobility network, and is specifically designed to accelerate the pace of building out portions of mobility networks really across the US and Canada and beyond. Not to sort of belabor the point, but we all know that improvements to the built environment really do take a good amount of time to implement, and that a lot of those changes to built environment does end up still being disconnected and incomplete. And then the poor messaging around projects kind of creates this fear or distrust that really empowers a vocal minority of opposition to also be part of the slower pace in terms of slowing down, watering down, getting into an elected leader's ear, that all can have sort of a waterfall effect of the success of project implementation. And at CityThread, through continued polling and focus groups and working directly with cities working this playbook, we've yet to find a city or town in the US that does not have majority support for complete mobility networks. And this support maintains in a majority, even when residents are asked about the level of trade-offs they're willing to give up, whether it's a parking spot or a lane, because people, believe it or not, really do understand that building highways or expanding roadways is not the sole solution to transportation in our communities, and understand that transportation also affects everything, whether it's housing, getting to work, and of course, climate. And so really part of the playbook is also, how do you leverage and activate this silent majority support that we know exists in your community? The playbook provides the strategy, tactics, and budget to move quickly. So really providing folks locally who are doing the really hard, great work to have what they need to move quickly, organize across many interests, build diverse coalitions, thinking about advocacy through different lenses, and also prioritizing those key network connections that will benefit all road users, regardless if you're going to be walking to the grocery store or driving to pick up someone from school. And again, whether your community is at a planning stage, an implementation stage, or thinking about how parks, transit, and affordable housing fits into how people are navigating the place that you live, AMP really is positioned to meet each community where they are today, and then identify how to meet community goals faster. And again, most US and Canadian cities, are approaching, because of all of the barriers that y'all mentioned in the chat, to implementing projects. A lot of bike and pedestrian project implementation is currently in small, disconnected efforts that really, as we know, does not deliver on the promise of providing multiple choices, thinking about how you change mode shift, how do you help reduce climate crisis effects with mobility and transportation. And I'm sure we all have mobility network plans on our desks, or visions of a complete mobility network plan. And the playbook really acknowledges that that's the the way that our city streets should look in the US. And we acknowledge that there are those challenges that we've discussed to get there, and then have the strategy and tactics to go from single, disconnected, one off projects and really thinking about how to focus on a network comprehensively and holistically, and then figure out how to get it built. We've worked with many cities that see these mobility investments as a public space and transportation investment as really a primary part of how they're trying to reach their climate goals. But other communities approach the playbook by shifting local momentum that has, for the last 20 years, been focused on greenways or parks or off street trails, and then sort of shifting that momentum and leadership to the on street network. And so not only can the playbook sort of one size fits all, though it's custom, that's not a good metaphor. It also is, people can approach how they want their mobility network to operate in a way that is resonant and authentic to the residents and your vision for the place that you live.
So, first phase, the assessment phase. What is it and why is it important? So, the assessment phase, which is the phase for which we're offering this technical assistance grant to conduct in your city, really helps us understand where are the opportunities in a city, what does it have in place that can help it to move faster, and what are the barriers, what's getting in the way of that movement. So really sort of sussing out which are the key items from that long list of reasons that we developed in that earlier slide that are specific to that location. In our assessment phase, we interview people from all 4 of the stakeholder groups that we kind of identify. So city staff, elected leadership, so city council members, mayors, community-based organizations and community leaders, and not just bicycle or mobility advocacy, but folks from a broad array of community organizations, whether that's the business community and interviewing people from the Chamber of Commerce or Downtown Business Association, arts and culture groups, faith-based groups, schools, PTO leaders or school superintendents. So all of that range of community-based organizations. And then also philanthropy that typically invests greatly in a community's well-being and helping it to thrive. So we interview people from all of those stakeholder groups to get their perspectives on what works well in a city and what doesn't, by asking them, like, what's a project that worked really well and where it had a great outcome and great engagement, and what was part of that and what didn't work so well and why didn't it work. And then we look at, all the plans and information that's kind of available on the ground, the bike ped plan, the master plan, the MPO, city regional plans that are in place. We read the minutes from city council meetings. They are a fascinating read, not really, but we read them anyway. And we read our, school board minutes, and we doom scroll all the social media that is out there about what the city is doing. We look at information that the city disseminates about projects, and we look at how the city solicits and receives information from its residents. And all of this is with the goal of understanding the relationships between these different groups, where relationships exist, where they are exist but are not working very well, or not a very positive relationship, and how and where communication is happening or not happening. And so, as an example, we worked in one city where there really wasn't a lot of dispute among community members about wanting more bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. They're all pretty clearly aligned. There wasn't like a strong anti-bike lane faction, but really the disagreement came down to the type and the location of that infrastructure. So, what kind of width were we talking about for a multi-use path? Do we want like a 2-directional or a 1-directional, just details that were really kind of hampering the city staff's ability to kind of make a recommendation and have it move forward. So, sure, it's not an unfamiliar situation where you have like a vocal minority who's really driving conversation by appealing to city council members, both in meetings and offline as well. And it was just just really hampering how the city staff and the city council were interacting and in terms of identifying a process, being clear about that process, and then moving forward. So they were stuck, there was so much disagreement about what would happen, that they couldn't really identify what was the shared interest that was driving the majority of their community members. And so in our assessment, we were able to sort of name that. We were also able to bring in perspectives from folks that weren't, at those city council meetings every other week, to kind of share their perspectives, and encourage that to be heard in as the city would develop its plans. So, and just kind of naming really directly, and mostly when we're in a city, we're not saying anything that's like shockingly new to people. We're pulling it together from a variety of different places and putting it in one space, and also making recommendations based on that information to help them move forward. And just noting that the activities you see on this slide at the bottom are what we do in every city participating in the program, and the outcomes on top are what we're trying to achieve through those activities. We have a set of deliverables from this grant that we'll cover in a later slide, but I just want to note that a number one thing that we identify as part of those outcomes is to set an ambitious but doable goal that we think the city could achieve in 2 to 3 years. And so that usually for mobility comes in terms of mileage, for how many miles of infrastructure, multi-use paths, bike lanes, or connected safe intersections that could be achieved, but making a recommendation of what we think is doable for the city to achieve, that we recommend they either adopt or customize to their situation, but still be ambitious. Next slide. So that's the detail on phase one and what we would be doing in the city, but we wanted to situate that phase within the larger playbook, because there are a couple other steps to actually achieve some of those goals. So the initiation phase, which comes after assessment, this can last anywhere from 6 to 12 months. It's where we set the city up to move more quickly. We often conduct polling and focus groups to understand the type and depth of community support. We help establish a broad and diverse coalition to support the goals. So it's not just the bike people or just the transit people, but it's really, incorporating the business, the faith communities, the arts and culture community, all the groups that have a stake in what their city looks like, and bringing them all together and help them understand how and in what ways they can most effectively support the city in moving more quickly. We develop a comms and messaging campaign that's built around the idea that no matter how you move, whether you're driving a car every day or you're riding the bus or you're walking or biking, your trips can be safer, easier, and more comfortable with a connected mobility network that serves everyone. And then we move into phase three, which is actually, starting to do it. So the city is moving ahead on the goal. The community partners are resourced to show up in support of it. They know how to support it. City staff has what they need. They have the technical assistance. They have support from leadership. Elected leaders have the confidence that their voters actually support what they're moving forward on. And local philanthropy knows their role in terms of supporting and resourcing all of these stakeholders. So in phase three, our role is kind of like the bumpers and the bowling alley. Like we're just keeping everybody aligned, focused, keep their eyes on the prize, eyes on that goal, and keeping everybody moving forward towards it. So those are the three phases. That was a quick run through. We can get more detailed as needed. Sarah.
So a little bit more into the brass tacks of the AMP technical assistance program and the application that's due on October 31st, which is, as we've stated multiple times, we have seen the playbook sort of be applied in a variety of cities, again, at a variety of different places and how they're thinking or actually implementing mobility networks. And so our encouragement is really your city, your community is right, is at the time and place to begin thinking and about the playbook. And so we really encourage, most every community and city to apply, whether that's your city or you know someone at a neighboring community that you think this would be a really good fit for. And due to our real focus on centering the community and creating new, deeper, more successful partnerships between community groups and city staff and local government, the application does have a requirement of a city staff lead and a community member lead. And that's really sort of as simple as the definition. So that could be the only city staff person that's working on bike and pedestrian and mobility work, maybe the appropriate person. If a city doesn't have that, we've seen folks that come from either a climate, sustainability, general public works. So really anyone that sort of is able to kind of spend some time and think about what mobility could look like in your community, whether you have no staff, small staff, and a large staff with lots of staff stakeholders to choose from. And the same is true from the community partner side. So really, whether it's a passionate resident who is able to, make that relationship with someone at the city, or a, active staffed advocacy or community organization, we're really just looking for how to really understand what's happening within the city and what are the capabilities and what are the city's goals, and also the same for our community partners. And we really try to ensure that we're here to support folks. So if you have specific questions on your application or specific questions about if, when, how you should apply, please reach out to Kyle, Zoe, or myself. We'll share our details into the chat. And again, just to kind of briefly cover the deliverables, which you can see on the screen, but the activities that Zoe described one slide back is really our audit of the processes and partnerships that are happening locally. What has been successful? What have you learned from? What would you never, ever want to do again? And then using that audit and analysis to develop a custom initiation and activation phase, budget and tactics, to really ensure that the partners that are part of this grant are aligned on what the shared goal is for mobility, and that you then have a clear sort of plan on how to go forward. And then we also bring all of our previous cohort of AMP grant recipients, and these are communities that have just completed phase one, or potentially also in the initiation and activation phases, together in the summer for a gathering of folks that are working the playbook. And then we also bring in leaders in mobility, community organizing, communications, to ensure that you have really more sort of technical resources to do the work locally. And then we'll also be working with the cohort as a cohort. So the communities that are also moving through the playbook will be partners for you to, connect on what's working, what's not, a place to vent. We found a lot of success with our AMP cohorts because while there may be drastically different demographics or geographies between City A and City B, because they both are thinking about accelerating their mobility network implementation in the same way with the same strategies and tactics, we actually find that City A and B, while they may be very, very different, are actually able to really connect and have really meaningful connections because they're all working and following the same playbook. And we are now at, first, Zoe, I'll let you, if you have anything to add before we move it over to questions.
I think I'm good. I just want to note that unfortunately the URL that we had in that last slide was not correct. Sarah, if you can copy paste that, I'm not able to chat with everyone. But if you can put that in the chat, then we will, oops, I think you're going to
All right.
on the slides. Moving over. There you go. Just make sure that you can put that URL in the chat so that folks can access the information that we have online about the technical assistance grant, the application materials, etc. So yeah, with that, I think we're open for questions. So
we had
oh, you go. Okay, I'll go. Question in, can we elaborate on the match? So we have grant funding that can support a portion of the work that we would do in any city. We have both the hard costs of performing a site visit, which is two of us coming to your city to meet in person with folks, as well as the cost of the convening, of bringing two folks from your city to that shared learning experience for 3 days. And then there's also our time to do this extensive assessment. So we have grant funding, as I said, to cover a portion of it, but we can't cover all of it. So we have the match, which is the local match, which is the requirement for what locals are putting into that cost, putting towards that cost. I'll note that we estimate that the full value is around $45,000 to $50,000 of time and hard costs that comes together. That match obviously just covers a portion of it. We've had in different cities, sometimes the city pays that, sometimes a local philanthropic organization pays that, sometimes your community partner pays that. So a lot of options, and we can work out details with you around that. And we don't require that it be paid, like upfront. We understand that, especially if it's a city paying, that there's some processes to go through to get that. So we can certainly work with your city in order to work through the details of that. Anything to add to that, Sarah? Okay. So next question is, how many City Thread and AMP cohorts are there? So we have 15 cities that we have or are currently working with right now. So we don't have those divided up into different smaller groups, although some of those, like the last group, 10 cities that came together in the convening, certainly identified within themselves those that were more peers, like cities in the Midwest, or had other, commonalities and are, connect directly. But in terms of cohorts, we just have that one cohort of cities that have participated in the AMP. And those cities have participated at different levels. Some have gone all the way through all 3 phases. We just finished the last grant round. So those cities are either preparing to move into phase 2 or in a kind of intermediary where they're kind of getting ready. So they're maybe in a phase 1.5. So somewhere between the assessment, they've been through assessment, not quite ready to initiate, but doing some prep work for that. I'm hoping that answers your question, but let me know if not. If you aren't able to make an application by October 31st, and I'd encourage you to reach out to us and see if we can extend. We do want to make selections by December in order to launch promptly at the beginning of January, because it takes us some time to do all the interviews, especially in when we're working with 4 or 5 cities. Although last year we worked with 9 cities, that was a lot. So it won't be quite as onerous there. But so I would just encourage you to reach out, and we can certainly make an extension, a modest extension, but we can work with you to figure it out. I would also say that we plan to offer these rounds twice a year. So it might be the better situation for you to wait and then apply for the fall 2024 round might be a better option for you as well. But certainly reach out and chat with us and we'll see what we can do. Does being awarded phase 1 ensure that the city will be selected to the other phases, and do grants apply to all phases? Good question. So this grant is just for phase 1. Moving on to the other phases is kind of up to you. We are happy to be involved in that. And we don't have at the currently like grant funding to bring to the table to help you do that. Like phase 2 is really starting to think about how you develop outside resources to help support all the different stakeholders to have what they need to work in partnership together to accelerate. So part of the recommendations that we make out of phase one is giving a sample budget and timeline along with a suggested goal and give you guidance on how to move forward. Some cities, are kind of figuring that out and moving forward on their own, and we check in with them and we provide some support where we can, but they're kind of moving ahead on their own. There are other cities that 100% want us to continue to be involved, and we're figuring out how to do that. And at that point, we'd be working out a specific scope of work with that city. So the grant only applies to phase one, and we don't, so to speak, like select cities for phase two. It's more like, what do you want to do? How can we partner? How can we support you in doing that? And what does that that engagement look like? Sarah, anything to add to that, or?
I would just add that for phase two and phase three, in addition to
supporting each city on how they want to move forward, if they want to sort of continue to partner with CityThread, if partnering with CityThread is the option that they want to move forward with, we also support with the fund development and philanthropy piece that is usually necessary locally to help support the playbook in future. And so we're there really as a partner in future phases, supporting in multiple ways.
Cool.
No,
you go ahead, Sarah. I've been talking. You go ahead.
Are non-cohort
guests allowed to attend the summer gathering? That's a great question. TBD, we are in the process of putting our final touches into the plan and strategy for the summer 2024's AMP gathering. And so subscribe to our newsletter or send me an email and I'll make sure I keep you on the list when we make a decision on whether we open it up to the public.
I had another person email me separately with a question around what comprises a strong application. And I just want to say here that I think being as honest as possible with us about what is going on with your city, both the, warts and all, like, let us know what are the challenges and what are the bumps that you're encountering, and what are the, also the strengths that you bring to the table. And I understand too, just from our last round, sometimes cities have strengths that they don't even recognize. We worked with ones, we probably of the 9 cities that we worked with, only 3 or 4 actually had a bicycle pedestrian plan in place that they were working from, that actually had projects and they had, budgeted amounts attached to it. The majority didn't. So sometimes cities thought the fact that they didn't have that plan in place or it wasn't updated was a barrier. And I would say that's actually kind of the norm, sadly. So both that isn't a barrier, and also if you actually have that in place, that's actually a strength. It was a surprise to some of the cities that had that, hey, you're ahead of the game, you actually have a plan that you're working from that we can work with. So sometimes it's just helpful to talk to peers in that way and realize that things that you sort of took for granted in your community are actually strengths that you have when compared to peer cities. So I would just say in an application, be really honest, and we're not going to go post it on LinkedIn about the challenges that your city faces. I think you'd be surprised to find that many cities share those challenges with you. So just tell us really what's happening, and that will help us make an assessment. Any other questions from folks?
I've had 2 questions that also came to me in different modes, and one, they're actually the same question but from different perspectives. One is from a small town who has a robust community organization that does a variety of work in mobility and green space, but doesn't currently have a deep staff relationship on the city side. And so they were asking, like, should they apply? And really my encouragement to them was, if they're able to get this a city staff person, on the phone, and that person, fully understands what the commitment is, but acknowledging that it is a new relationship, that is a really great way to begin a new relationship between a city partner and a community partner by using this grant. And so if you're still in the relationship building phase, we've also seen a lot of success with using this as a way to get to know each other, align on how you want to work together, and have dedicated time and support to get kind of the culture of how you will work together going forward established during this grant program. And then another sort of flip side is we are so overwhelmed, we're building, I can't even stop and think, is this the right time? And just to say that we will have future rounds of this, but we always think the right time is now. While there is a time commitment for city staff to participate, we also find that by having a clear path forward and being able for city staff to better engage with community partners who want to help and are willing to follow directions, that we're also able to potentially alleviate some workload or move around capacity to help sort of solve for some of those capacity and sort of those challenges.
If those are all the questions, Sarah, you might want to move on to the next slide that has our contact information on it. Please do feel free to reach out to any or all of us if other questions pop up for you. Please do share this opportunity with others in your networks that you think might be interested, and please do follow us on social media. We are hoping to have more resources and information available to cities, and are, excited to connect with any and all of you. So thank you for your time here today. Hope it was helpful. Let us know if you have any follow-up questions, and hope the rest of your day is awesome.
For those still hanging on, this will be shared as a recording. So if you want to share with other colleagues, we encourage you to do so.
Thanks, y'all.
Just
Can you end recording?
let's stop.
Kyle paused it.
Cool. So I think we had 14 new people, 13 or 14. So that's not new people. I mean, separate from us, 13 or 14, separate from us. So that's good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kyle, for handling the Q&A.
Yeah, can't wait
To hear what you think. I'm trying to figure out how to allow you to speak.
How'd we do?
That was the easiest webinar I've ever done. I thought it went great.
Nice. Thank you. I think it went really well as well.
I think it probably is one of our,
I think the new way we're talking about the
playbook and the phases is the most clear.
so that felt good.
Good.
I still am thinking about how it
It's very esoteric. There's no photos of it feels, I guess, dry, but I don't know how to overcome that. As is my like immediate reaction.
I mean, we could add some things in about like the deliverables, like have photos of us like meeting with, people at a city, us like looking